Hey, welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making a traditional Mexican dish called Huevos Rancheros, which I think translates to cowboy eggs. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what it translates to. But it's an awesome one-pot dish, often breakfast, but can be used as a lunch meal or a quick and easy dinner as well. Today's kind of a gloomy, rainy day, not super warm out, and I like it on days like today because it's warming and spicy and stuff like that, so it's a good one. So ingredients-wise, we've got fire-roasted diced tomatoes. These guys I found, I think, at Bulk Barn. I've also seen them at the grocery store and stuff like that. Eggs, obviously. We got a variety of dried peppers, which we'll talk about in a minute. Ground cumin, spice. About a cup of diced onions, a couple cloves of garlic. Recipe calls for Mexican chorizo sausage. Can't find that, but I was able to find Spanish style chorizo at the grocery store. So pretty much the same thing, that Spanish influence on Mexican cuisine there. We've got some cilantro, which we'll be using at the very end. And then actually what I'm gonna put together right now is what they call the lime crema. So basically, what you do is you put about a quarter of a lime, and I've got this cute little container here, so I'm gonna squeeze a quarter of the lime into there, and then add some 35% heavy cream or whipping cream. It's probably 2 or 3 tablespoons, something like that. And screw the lid onto this guy. And this just has to sit in the fridge. So the recipe calls for a lot more of this to be made, but I find a little bit goes a long way. So I'm gonna stick this stuff in the fridge and then we'll continue on. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the peppers that we're using today and some of the more common dried chili peppers that are used in Mexico. So we've got a few here to have a look at. We've got pasilla chilies, which look something like this. Ooh, long and skinny. Dried chili, used in a lot of different dishes. And not super hot in terms of heat score. Those guys are getting about 1,500 to 3,000 on the heat scale. Then we've got ancho chilies, dried ancho, also known as the poblano chili. You'll see them sometimes green in the grocery store, much bigger. Also not super hot, like maybe 1,500 heat scale. To give you guys some perspective for those guys, it also used something called adobo sauce. And adobo is essentially smoked jalapeno chili peppers, chipotle peppers, and tomato paste and onions all combined together. So chipotle, actually the Aztec word for smoked pepper, which is kind of cool, is just a red ripened smoked dried jalapeno pepper. And everybody knows the jalapeno pepper. And that guy's about 5,000 on the heat index. So I'll give you a sense. We can go up to really hot peppers, which I'm not going to put into this recipe. This is a habanero pepper. This is 100 to 300,000 on the heat index. So like 100 to 300 times hotter than a jalapeno pepper. So a little bit goes a long way with those guys, and I would reserve those for another meal. So we're going to start out here. I'm going to get my pan warming up. And we're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter to our pan. And while that's starting to melt, I'm just going to bring over some of our ingredients here that I've diced up. So the recipe calls for, I believe it's 4 ounces of the chorizo sausage. I chopped up what I thought was about that much. And the first thing I'm going to do, get the butter around in the pan here. is we're going to fry up the chorizo. We don't want to let that overcook, so once it's fried and release some of its oils and things like that, we'll pull that out, throw it in the bowl. And then we'll get the onions and the garlic going, add some of our spices in, and then all the rest kind of comes together pretty quickly from there. So we might as well get our chorizo sausage in there. Get those guys cooking. Get it to heat up quickly. Come on, here we go. I'm gonna bring some stuff over. Well, that's going, so we're ready. There's our adobo, our cumin. Recipe calls for a teaspoon each of the pasilla and the ancho peppers, and so I basically just ground up a bunch of those in our handy dandy bullet blender. So we've got those dried peppers ready to go. Yeah, looking good. Listen to that sizzle. Okay. Smells good. Mesmerizing. There we go. All right, they're starting to fry up now. Probably don't need to go too much longer on them. Butter's starting to brown a bit there on the bottom of the pan, so I'm going to get these guys out. All right, beautiful. Next up is the onion. Get the onion to start sweating and turn a little bit translucent. Good. And once we get the crushed tomatoes in there, the diced tomatoes, they'll pull some of that brown butter off the bottom, and that'll help to add some flavor as well. Garlic's going to go in. Definitely don't ever want to let the garlic burn. It turns really bitter. Okay, now that we have the garlic and the onion in there, we can add a a quarter teaspoon of ground cumin. We're going to add all of the ground ancho and pasilla chilies. And then the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of our adobo sauce. And I find it's really about how hot you want this dish to be. So you can see one of the chipotles in there. Let's throw that guy in. Okay. Adds a nice smoky flavor to it. You can smell that already. All right. That chipotle will leave a nice little surprise in there for somebody. Let those guys kind of warm up a little bit. We can put our sausages back in. And now we can add the fire roasted tomatoes. And I suppose if you couldn't find diced fire roasted, you could probably just use regular diced tomatoes and probably would still be good. Beauty. Okay, so this actually needs to cook a little bit. We want to let it reduce down and cook off some of the liquid and get it to thicken up a little. You'll notice that the tomatoes will start releasing some of their water. It'll get a little bit more liquidy, and then we'll let it cook down and start to thicken up. So I'm going to put it on pause here, and then we'll come back once that has cooked down a little bit. And we're back. Okay, so while you guys were gone, we let this cook down a little bit, and I chopped up some cilantro for a garnish on top afterwards. Probably took maybe 5 minutes, something like that, for it to cook down a bit. So basically what I want to do now is I want to get the eggs in there. And in order to do that, what we're going to do, there's 2 ways you can do this. Like the recipe recommends cracking each of the eggs into a ramekin, and then from the ramekin you kind of get them into the sauce here, but I'm just going to crack them right in. So what you want to do is you want to make a little well in the sauce. I'm going to move the tomatoes out of the way. It looks like it fills in with sauce pretty quickly, but it'll create a little hole where the egg can kind of sit in there. So crack 1 egg, egg goes into the well. Make another well. Crack another egg. Egg goes into the well. Two more times. And I just use the knife to crack just to make sure that I don't damage the yolk in the process. Last one. Egg goes into the well. Okay, beautiful. So what we want to do now is we want to get those eggs to set up partially. You don't want them to cook all the way through. You want them soft, but we want them to set up part way. So before we put the lid on for them to do that, I'm going to put some cheddar cheese on top. Nice layer of cheddar on there. Boom. And then the lid goes on. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit. It's going to take about, I'm going to say 5 minutes for those eggs to set up. So we will pause her there and come back when they're ready. And we're back. So we have finished cooking up the eggs. And our Huevos Rancheros is done. You can see the beautiful eggs in there, and it's saucy and bubbly and probably molten hot right now. So we're going to transfer this guy over here. And I want you guys to see what this looks like. So, I'm gonna get in there and get myself one of the eggs. And the sauce. Beautiful. And then we're gonna put, now we make it pretty. Put some cilantro on top. Cilantro has kind of got a nice fresh taste to it. Some people don't like it, but I like it. Going everywhere, but in the bowl. And then the lime cream that I had in the fridge there, and then we're just gonna drizzle that guy on top. Like so. And there we have it, Huevos Rancheros. I like to eat mine with a piece of bread sometimes. I think we got some pita bread sitting around, so I will have mine with some pita bread, and it's gonna warm me up and be a nice lunch this afternoon. So thanks for joining us today, guys, and we'll see you again soon.